Welcome to another Books and Things with Tom. And a kind of exciting show tonight. We're taking you back to the farmers market that we did a couple months ago. Only this time we're going to be talking to Jim Jahoda.
Correct.
And his bees. Now, I'm not going to talk to these guys. He talks to them. But I'm going to tell you about the bees and how they make honey. And I'll tell you about a little lesson later I learned about honey. Anyway, Jim, welcome.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming down.
Pleasure to see you again.
I love your bees. As long as they're in that box, they're a lot of fun.
Well, this hive is very secure. You can see I have it locked up.
Yeah.
For markets and things, you need that because of the little people that always touch everything. At the farmer's market, the little children, you can tell when they come by your booth because every tag is rearranged. And the glass jars of our maple syrup or anything, you're always on pins and needles a little bit. But
That's cool. Now, how did you get into bees?
you know, beekeeping can be a hobby, and then it can turn into a way of life. And my father was a biologist, and I attribute him to my low grades in high school because I had a college education by the time I was 11. He was a marine biologist, and I was diving in Long Island Sound at the age of about 10. My brother's a zoologist, so I guess it's just fitting that I'm an entomologist with the bees. I'm a school teacher, and my whole family is educators. And I was about 8 years old, and my dad threw me in his little brown station wagon Rambler and took me for a ride into Willimantic. And we went down by Lauder Park on an early June day. I'll never forget it. And we went to a Ukrainian's house, a European man who didn't speak a lick of English. And in his backyard, which was no bigger than, 100 by 200 foot backyard, there must have been 50 beehives.
Really?
And it was just like the whole air was just buzzing because in that time of year, the bees are really working.
Wow.
And we brought 6 hives home, and my dad kind of started me off with it, but I don't know if he really helped me a lot with it. And back then in the early 60s, late 50s, it was it was easier to keep bees because there weren't as many pests. Some of our mites and things now are pretty destructive and really dwindled our populations of bees, honeybees that is, in the 80s. However, back then, you could pretty much let your bees go the seasonal cycle and even get honey without much management. At least that's the way it seemed to me, even though I never really knew a lot about them. But I learned over the years. And so that was my beginning. And then you get trained in it, and it becomes a passion, you know.
Wow.
And I started maple syruping because my grandparents in northern New Hampshire, we have a tree farm up there now. That's protected under the Forest Legacy easement with the federal government. It's a 500-acre farm, and it's the headwaters of the Connecticut River, actually. And that land now is managed for forest products. And they were maple producers in the very primitive sense.
Wow.
You know, with those flat, I still have the flat steel pan that's about as big as this table with 2 handles. And they used to, boil, and then they would just pour it off and put it through a wool filter. Of course, maple syrup production has changed dramatically with vacuum and tubing, and we do all that in Lebanon.
And you said that your motto is bees and trees.
Bees and trees. We try to keep it simple.
Yeah.
I really don't have time for anything else. All the other stuff. One of the primary reasons that I have a business and go to the markets is because I have a partner that works really hard. Chuck, about 8 years ago, because of our daughters, we're friends, got involved, and he was really looking to it, and he bothered me enough, so I said, okay, come on. And it's worked out with it. As a partner, he does our bottling, and all our inventories and bookkeeping is all taken care of, and those are things that I am not good at.
Yeah.
I love my agricultural stuff, but the other side of that is not my forte. So I guess I was very lucky in many respects. And
Always turn telephone off.
you never
before
know, it could be somebody very important.
Shouldn't be calling now.
But anyway, so, at that point, the markets, we started to go to a few markets and realized that there was definitely a demand for Connecticut grown products and quality. And that's what we sell.
Now, the trees are in
Lebanon primarily, Franklin.
Lebanon. Okay.
Yep, we have some of our tap lines, and unfortunately, I don't live at the bottom of a hill with all the gravity feeds. I have friends up in northern New England and such, and I'm so envious of them. But my sugar bush is pretty flat in elevation, and I put out maybe 300 buckets around the green and in my home lot. But our big lines are on Farmers Cowland with the Gray Wall Farms. We have a fairly nice tap line there, and we have some new tap lines. I'm always looking, and of course, you can go all over the place. People always have trees and say, okay, I got 5, 10 trees, but that's not worth it for us.
Yeah.
And so over the years, it's taken quite a few years to really establish our tap lines. And in the early 90s, that's what I was doing, mid-90s.
And how many trees do you have?
I've lost count many times.
Yeah.
And how many taps I have, I've lost count. It's really hard to be working in the woods and count. I probably should someday. I estimate we put out about 3,000 taps
Really?
or so. And, we have a sugar house with an RO, which is a reverse osmosis that concentrates our sap, because we used to spend tremendous amount of time boiling.
Yeah.
1.5% sap. It takes 40 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of syrup, of course. But when you can take out about 30 gallons of that liquid before you even start burning your energy, it's tremendous. Time saver, energy saver. I mean, we still put in 12, 14 cords of wood, and it's all split to kindling to get a hot. We just finished.
And when
Just finished.
when is sap time?
Sap time, actually, maple syrup is the first crop of the season. And this year it was a little late for us. We made great maple syrup. We typically make not a lot of fancy, but more mediums to dark syrups. And that seems to really suit many people's palates because it has that full maple flavor. The season was shorter because of the cold February.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's like anything. If you're going to do it right, it takes all year. I mean, I'm already working in the woods on tap lines.
Yeah.
And by the middle of January, we usually are tapped. And typically you'll get early runs in January. This last year, though, of course, the end of January, everything froze solid, and we had a heck of a February. So that took out about 3-4 weeks at the front end of our season.
Now, when you say tap, how far does that go into the tree?
Depends on the tap. It's like anything in life. It depends. It's not an easy answer.
Yeah.
There's different taps.
Okay.
For buckets, you're not with tubing. The traditional tap was a 7/16, but now we've gone to a tree saver tap, which is better for the tree. And in my silvicultural knowledge and background, I don't put more than 2 taps in any tree. Some people will put 3 or 4 in a real big tree. I don't do that. And the tree saver taps, which are now more the standard, the 5/16, I believe that's their size. Those taps are very close to a sapsucker hole. So if you've ever gone along in the spring and you've seen those lines of holes along the maple and they're dripping,
Oh, yeah.
that is a sapsucker that has drilled a number of holes to attract insects, and then he'll come and eat the insects. And those holes will close up. And so the tree saver tap now will close up in 1 year.
Oh, wow.
And not that the 7/16 hole wouldn't close up in a year, but many of them would. So it's a healthier thing for the trees. Is syrup production diminished? A little bit, but not a lot.
Yeah.
So
Choking here.
That's okay.
Sorry. So, you run a tap in.
And then you hitch it to lines typically that are all downhill, preferably. That's what you see up on the hills of Vermont. And anybody that has a hill will use that. And gravity will create a vacuum.
And this is maple syrup.
That is your maple syrup right here, correct.
And it's Sugar Maple Farms. Do you have, if somebody goes up there, can they buy it?
Yes.
Okay.
That would be my partner's house, who does the bottling and the packaging. When we produce our syrup, and if you wanted to switch to a pitcher, you can see it. It's pitcher 7, if you're into it. The evaporator, when it comes off through the flue pan into our front pan, it'll go through a series. Yeah, we got it. A series of baffles which create the syrup coming from the top of that pitcher. It'll go to the left, then through an opening, then go to the right, then down through an opening to the left. And by the time it comes out into that bucket, in theory, it should be a steady stream of syrup. And then we put it into 5-gallon containers, and it goes right immediately into cold storage. And we keep all our syrup, around 45, 50 degrees, and it keeps it fresher. And then when it's time to bring it up, my partner Chuck will bottle it the week of our markets. And so our syrup doesn't sit in a plastic container for very long. And I think that's a real benefit.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned markets. What markets do you go to?
Well, we like Eastern Connecticut because it's close to home.
Yeah.
We do the Stonington market, and that goes into the Velvet Mill.
Yeah.
That is a very beautiful market. My
It is.
wife, who is the better half, she's the local honey there. And she has a lot of friends down in that area, so they visit with her, and that's a great market for us. I do the Denison Farmers Market on Sundays, and we are at the Lebanon Market.
Okay.
My partner goes to the Colchester Market, which it's all close by, pretty much.
And I always recommend everybody go to the markets. You're going to get better food. On occasion, you might pay a little more, but it's worth the health.
Oh, it is. It is, without a doubt.
You don't know what you're buying in the stores. It's
I'm the
awful.
first one to tell people, because I get people at markets that come by and say, "Oh, I'm from Vermont," and my reply to that is, "Well, taste this."
Yeah.
Those are fighting words, but the reality of it is that there's good syrup in every state.
Yeah.
It's not where it's from; it's how it's made.
Yeah.
And I like to think I have made most of my mistakes in making maple syrup. The quality is there, it tastes good, it's taken care of, it's bottled correctly. When you go to a bigger store where you're not buying from a producer, you're really buying syrup from many sources.
Yeah.
And they'll blend people's syrups, and you don't really know which sugar house you're getting your product from. Not that that's bad, but I don't know, I like to have my finger on what I eat, if I can.
Yeah, you'd like to know that, especially with our markets, we've got so many great markets, down farmers markets.
We do.
And you guys all sell such great products.
Yep.
And when you try some of this stuff versus its other, you can taste the difference.
Yep.
I was buying inexpensive bread. It was good. And then I left it alone for about a week and a half and didn't touch any. It was still good. So I threw it away. And I thought, no bread sits for a week and a half. It doesn't get moldy.
No, that's right.
And then I went back and tried it once again, and I could taste the chemicals because I hadn't eaten in so long. And I said, you got to get off this. And so I haven't bought it since.
Well, I'll tell you, my wife and I, we eat so much better.
Yeah.
With our bees, like in picture 1 here that I'm looking at the table, that's the yard behind my sugar house at my home lot. But we keep around 10 to 15 hives in each yard, and we have these at farmers, like Purity Farms up in Plainfield, Davis Farm down in Stonington.
Yeah.
We have bees now there. This is the first year with those 2 yards, and they are doing phenomenal.
Now, what's the reason for using different farms?
Partially because they're friends, and they have the substantial orchards and the open space that I like. With the Davis farm, I'm just really downright curious as to what kind of honey it's going to produce. This
All right,
is the
so
first year.
they can fly in and out of those boxes.
They can
Houses.
fly.
They can fly in and out of the homes there.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah.
Yep, and they'll go
Unlike this thing.
three. Yeah, this is just an observation, but they can go up to, I think 6 miles, but that's not very common. Usually 2-3 miles.
Yeah.
They'll forage in the area. At the Davis farm, though, they're so close to the marsh, and
Yeah.
you've got seaside lavender, you got the rose hips, you've got a whole different biome along that strip of, Long Island Sound and the coast, and I know Larry does plant some buckwheat in some of his fields. I'll be curious to see what I pull off.
Yeah.
We're getting close. This has been a spectacular year for honey production.
Huh.
Usually when I put out new hives or young hives, I don't really count on honey from them, but this year I'm getting some honey from them, so
All right.
really happy.
Let's talk about the box.
Well, this is an Ulster hive. It's an observation box. You have all types of observation hives. I like this one really because it's a working hive in its truest sense. On this side there is an opening, and the bees can fly out. Underneath this top plexiglass, you'll see the locks here. There are 5 more frames. These are frames, and so what I did yesterday afternoon, I opened up the top, and this wasn't there. And I found the queen on this frame, and I put her in here. And then I put a division board feeder, they call them, with sugar water, because bees will eat sugar water. Not prefer it, but they will survive on it. And so there's a division board feeder in there to keep the workers happy, because your foragers are looking a way out, because they're ready to work.
No.
So they're busy a little bit, and the queen is up here, and right below there's some metal bars that are just the right thickness. They're called queen excluder bars, metal pieces. So they keep the queen from migrating down into the bottom of the box.
Oh, really?
But the workers can. And so they can go up and down. So the queen is sequestered, for lack of a better word. And she, of course, can lay thousands of eggs a day. She can lay up to 3,000 eggs a day. At least that is what I think I remember reading about.
Wow.
And all these are pupa, larvae which are capped and going to pupate out. Typically, this is a good example of a hive with some food around the outside of brood. And this is a young queen. This is not a Italian queen. This is a Carnolian queen. And I have to admit, I am pretty lazy in many respects because I do not mark my queens. And I should. There's a color scheme for marking. For instance, if I marked her this year, she would be a blue dot on her thoracic region.
Oh, really?
And then it goes to white, I believe, and yellow and so forth. So you can keep track, because the bees will dispatch her if she's not a very productive queen and raise their own, and that's a superseding. And of course, the way bees multiply and reproduce is in the spring, they'll swarm. And the queen is right there.
Oh, okay.
Right down here. See, she was up around 11 o'clock before.
Yeah.
But she's right down there. And these workers right here are all very young, infertile females.
Huh.
And when they hatch out, when they pupate out for the first 2 or 3 weeks, their wax glands in their abdomen and some of their other features in their body are not fully developed. So they stay in the home and they become house bees. And they do the cleaning, they do the capping, they feed the eggs up to the next stage before they seal up those workers. And then the last 3 weeks of their life is when they go out and forage. And even then, in the summertime, foraging, they might not even last 3 weeks.
Really?
And in a lifetime, one of these workers will make 5 drops of honey.
Really?
It takes 12 bees to make a teaspoon.
Oh my God. So
And
you really need a lot of bees.
To make this jar,
Yeah.
they have to fly around the world 4 times. It's pretty incredible. They're
Yeah.
incredible little guys.
Now, what does the queen do?
She does nothing but lay eggs.
Ah, that's it.
Yeah, that's her role, and she will lay eggs up until the middle late fall, and then she'll slow up for a while during the winter.
Yeah.
But probably the most stressful time for bees, and a lot of beginning beekeepers don't realize this, is late winter, early spring, because they have to keep the eggs and the larvae warm to 90 degrees or thereabouts.
Wow.
And they do that by vibrating their thoracic wing muscles. I think it's, I want to say 60% of their body weight is their wing muscles. And if you looked at these bees, and these are carnolians, they're a little dark bee. The yellow bee, the brighter yellow bee is the Italians. And carnolians are from Austria, Yugoslavia area, which means they're a little hardier. Northern European, they can deal with the cold better. But they have their body is covered really with like almost hairs that look like feathers. And so in the winter, they'll ball up and they'll intermesh their feathers. That was me. Yes, why did I do that? I'm sorry. I hope it stops. Anyway, and so they intermesh their feathers and they insulate the outside of the ball, and they will vibrate until they get tired, and then they'll go inside. The winter bee can last a lot longer because it's not burning itself out foraging. But and then the inside of the ball during the winter is 90 degrees with the queen, and that's how they live. But they have to have proximity to food, which would be their honey and their pollen. And so what's here now that ceases to exist, though, because she won't be laying, is empty comb where they can live. And so this is a fairly good representation, although I don't like the brood pattern, but these could be all newly hatched openings here. Typically, if that was filled right over with all this capped workers, that would be a good queen.
Now, where's the honey?
The honey is right out here, but if you look at picture number, I think 2,
It should be on the back. Marked on the back.
yeah, no.
I marked them on the back.
No, this is the honey. Now that is a honey super, and you have 3 types of supers. This top one I'm pulling off is really one of the smaller types of supers, and you put that on top of where the bees live. This is a 9+ inch thickness, but if that was filled with honey, it'd be 100 pounds. One of those boxes. Wow. So you get smaller boxes, thinner. And that's what's in that picture there. I use medium size.
That's not the one, right?
No, that's me spinning it out, but that's fine, because that's what we do. We put those frames into an extractor, and that's a radial extractor, so you
Now,
don't have
those
to
are the
flip.
frames that are in here.
Right here. If this was full of honey, I could decap it and then spin it. Right, I could. But of course, this is their living area, so.
Yeah.
And of course, you have to leave, there's a little bit of an art where you have to leave enough honey for your bees to make the winter.
Yeah.
And I'm always pretty conservative with that. I try to put some honey up there.
That's incredible.
There's a lot to beekeeping.
Yeah.
I'm still learning.
Let me go through a couple of those other pictures before we're running out of time.
Sure. The extractor
We got 5 minutes left.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, I have some pictures. Number 4 is just from the day before yesterday. That was over at Ron Hader's farm up on Franklin
that
Hill.
one.
And you can see I'm lifting off an inner cover, and the bees, there's not too populated in there. Actually, I took that top white super off and moved it to a different hive. But if you look below the first green one, you can see a queen excluder to keep the queens from going up. And below that is where the bees live, pretty much. And I'm no hero, so I wear my veil, and I try not to get bit. I've been bit, many times, and I've never enjoyed it at all.
Not a happy day.
No, the worst thing is if they get in your bee bonnet, and then you run around like an idiot. But,
And what is the next picture?
the next picture, That would be just a typical yard. This is from the same hives over at the Hadar farm. And
Now, do these sit out all winter just like this?
well, that's a good point. Actually, what I'll do is I'll take the honey off. I'll come over probably in 2 weeks or another week. And every year is so different. You really have to be in tune with what's going on. This year, the dry has made very sweet nectar and has allowed the bees to put up a lot of honey. It's really saved them a lot of work, the drought. It's crazy. But yes, I will put mouse guards on them because mice like to go in hives.
Oh, really?
And I will also reduce the entrances. Probably the biggest killer of bees in the winter is ventilation and moisture.
Oh.
Because it's just like us, you know, if you get wet and cold,
Yeah.
you're in trouble.
Wow.
So beekeeping's a study in itself. I'll
I
say that.
I think it's just fascinating. I
I
like your
talk to
jaws.
people all day. I talk to people at the markets all day. Come visit us.
Yeah. And you never get tired of talking about it.
No, I love it. It's educational.
Yeah.
And it the more people you get into your environment.
It's good glass.
Yes.
I love the bottles.
Yep, little maple syrup.
Yeah.
Yep, these are real popular at Christmas and for, gifts.
Yeah. And now, this is maple syrup.
Correct.
Okay.
The trees and the bees.
And these
The bees.
These are all the same kind of.
This is a dark amber, right? This is a grade A dark amber. And I think the Maple Institute, is going to be changing the grading, which is going to mess me up big time, but we'll see how that goes.
Well, it's been fascinating, and I think it's just.
I didn't get to answer all those questions.
I know he didn't. We got to talking, and after having you on again, I'll ask the questions. But I think people should get down to the markets and see what you got down there.
The best thing about the markets, Tom, I really think, is that you get to talk to the producers and you get to taste products before you buy them.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a win situation.
I told you before, and I'm going to now tell the audience, I had a bottle of honey at my house, and granted, it expired in 2013, so that's how much I use it. But it also said on the label, throw away after 6 months after expiration date. And I didn't think honey expired.
It's the only food that never goes bad.
Yeah, so
That would be a red flag to me.
yeah, so that's a store one. Read the labels in the store because they'll tell you, get rid of it
And,
after a certain date.
and honey is the only food made by an insect
That's
for
right.
people.
Yeah, that's true too. And I went on the internet, you can do the same. There's about 100 uses of honey, from burns to coughing to I don't know what else, but you can use it for a lot of stuff instead of sugar. It does have sugar in it, and for diabetes, I did read that it's not necessarily the best thing because it does have a lot of sugar in
It does have sugar, but the net benefits are the antioxidants.
Well, it's been fun, and I'm
Always a
just
pleasure.
being told that we're done. And I'd like to thank you for being here. This has been a great show, I think.
All right,
I mean,
well-
it's intriguing. And I want to thank SEC TV for putting the show on. I thank you for watching. If you have any questions, email me at santostom@comcast.net. You think I know this by heart, but just anyway, you should be reading. Cuddle up with a good book, and I'll see you next week.
I know. That's good.